Hello again. I've been thinking a bit about building endurance and how important FTP, critical power, critical pace, and interval training sessions are in building up your endurance. So if you're training for a very long event, like I know a lot of you are, whether it's an ultra distance running race, a trail race, or an ultra distance cycling event, which a lot of you are bike packers, I know that. And when you're starting out, or if you're pushing the boundaries of your endurance, then you've got to do long training sessions. And what you might find is if you push in the duration of your longest training session, it takes you quite a long time to recover from it. You might only manage to do your long training session, say you're doing it at the weekend. It might take you a week to recover from it, or it might even take you 2 weeks to recover from it. It might be better to do, one long session one weekend, and then a medium session the other weekend, and then a long session the next weekend. So you can sort of quite quickly build up your endurance, your duration that you can ride or run for, but you can't really do a lot else. So during this phase, trying to do higher intensity interval type sessions, structured interval sessions, can be counterproductive because it can compromise your recovery, or it can, if you're not recovering fast enough from your long training sessions, it can lead you into sort of a downhill spiral of increasing fatigue and risking illness or injury. What I quite like to do during this phase is to mix in a bit of harder work with the endurance type training, and that can work in very nicely with your endurance work, as you can work a bit harder on climbs, or actually particularly if you're training for an off-road event, then you might have to work harder on climbs just because of the terrain. You might not be fit enough to be running or riding in your endurance training zone on certain gradients. So mixing it up a bit in your longer rides or runs is a way of building some intensity into your training plan without the structured interval sessions that might just be a bit too much for you during this endurance building phase. Hopefully this is making sense. Of course, you could say, well, I'll just do more shorter rides and I'll build my endurance that way by building up the overall volume. But if you've been training for a while, you know that, say, if you're a cyclist, a 5-hour ride is quite a lot harder than a 3.5-hour ride, and it's a lot harder for good reason, because you're actually pushing your body to go beyond its previous limits. Obviously it might not be 3.5 hours to 5 hours, it might be like 7 hours to 12 hours or something, or whatever. But you're pushing those boundaries, and if you push those boundaries, you have to recover from it. But if you don't push the boundaries, then you don't push the boundaries, so you don't actually, you don't really build the endurance as effectively. Training is all about giving yourself a stimulus and then recovering from it. And often the best way to build up this endurance for longer events is to give yourself quite a big stimulus at the weekend, and then recover from it during the week, and then do it again when you've recovered, which might actually be a midweek training session, or it might be you have to wait till the next weekend or the next weekend, to coin the Scottish phrase, so that you're doing it every 2 weeks. And of course this is very counter to what you might come across if you're doing a Zwift training session or a Trainer Road or Rouvy, whereby most of the sessions are quite high intensity but relatively short. Well, of course, what they want to do is help you see quick progress in something that's measurable. Now, your ability to ride for 5 hours, 7 hours, 12 hours, or run for 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours is it's quite difficult to measure whether you're getting better or not at that. But it's quite easy to measure. If you're on a bike, your FTP on an indoor trainer, or if you're running your best time over 5 kilometres. But those values might not relate at all closely with how you're going to perform in your ultimate ultra endurance event. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be doing training sessions between your long training sessions. What I'm saying is that trying to do harder, high intensity interval sessions within, between longer endurance rides or runs can be counterproductive in certain phases of your training. And during this endurance phase, you'll notice that you're getting faster, because as you start to handle the duration better, as you nail the nutrition, for instance, or you get better at utilising your fat reserves, your whole metabolism gets better at going longer. What you'll find is that you you feel much more comfortable starting out. You're able to, you're more confident, so you can ride a little bit harder or run a little bit harder. But mainly when you're getting towards the end of these rides, you're not suffering from the same level of fatigue. So you're maintaining your pace better. And it's at that point, once you're comfortable with the distance, with the duration, that you can start moving to doing things a little bit faster. So once you've actually built up this endurance, then you can start to focus on getting faster. And a lot of you experienced athletes, well, you won't have a problem with the distance or the duration. So you might, at the start of the season, as you start your training season, you might do a few long training sessions, or you might even just leave that to later on because you'll be able to pick it up quite quickly. It's always, once it's in there, you can always go long. But if you don't have that, then you have to go through this endurance phase. Anyway, once you've got this endurance in your system, and you can ride for long enough or run for long enough or do the distance, sort of, once you've reached whatever metric you use to measure the level of endurance you need, then you can start to think about getting faster. And at that stage, you can do fewer long training sessions, back off the longer sessions. So you may be just doing one a month or one block a month, where you might do 2 or 3 back-to-back long sessions to really sort of give you a good stimulus, and then obviously you have to recover from it afterwards. But then the other weeks would be lower duration long rides, and you can build. That's when you start to build in the intensity, building the interval sessions, and you're actually filling up your week with harder training sessions rather than just having your harder training sessions at the weekends. So it's all a case of, if you give yourself a big stimulus at the weekend, then it takes a long time to recover from it, and that all depends on your fitness, how big a stimulus is. But if you want to spread things out, and which you can do once you're doing higher intensity work, you can do more frequent, shorter sessions to build up that speed, and just do the occasional long training session to maintain your endurance. But even then, if you're training for longer events, one interval session, one structured, focused interval session per week might be enough for you. And then you do one of your longer training sessions, one of endurance training sessions is a bit of an unstructured one where you work harder on the climbs, and then the other stuff is really just low intensity. Because you don't need a lot of high intensity training to develop your fitness, your VO2 max, your critical pace, or your FTP. In fact, less is often more. Doing too much is generally counterproductive, because if you just do a little bit less than optimal, you can work that a bit harder. Mentally you're fresher, physically you're fresher. You can work a little bit harder and you can create more of a stimulus. It's very personal, and different things work for different people. But just be cautious of the interval session, and certainly once you're starting out, if you're trying to build your endurance, don't worry about it, because the main focus is to be able to get to the end of your event, and you'll get fit just by doing some training, building that endurance, because you're creating a big stimulus when you go along. I hope all that makes sense. Get in touch if I can help, make some comments, and check out our group plan. We've modified our group plan a little bit. We call it Ultra Fitness. That doesn't mean to have to be ultra fit to do it. What it means is it's Ultra Fitness for ultra endurance training, and you can find it on our website. Just click on the Ultra Fit tab, endurancebikerun.com. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.